That was smart, Sally.
Not you or your whole army can take him away from me. And don't you forget it.
Veronica Lake, a name that once dazzled Hollywood's golden age. Her trademark peekaboo hairstyle and cool blonde waves captivated audiences. But inside the placid-looking lake was a flame burning far too bright, and when her end came, it was brutal. It's one of the most tragic stories in Hollywood, and you won't believe how it unfolded. Veronica Lake's journey to stardom began far from the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. In 1922, Constance Frances Marie Okelman was born into a working-class family in Brooklyn, New York. Her father, Harry, worked for an oil company, while her mother, Connie, was a homemaker. Life took a devastating turn when Lake was just 10 years old. Her father perished in a horrific industrial explosion in Philadelphia. This tragedy set the stage for a tumultuous relationship between Constance and her mother. After remarrying, her mother began pushing her daughter into acting, despite the girls' protests. The strain on their relationship was immense, but Connie was unwilling to take no for an answer. In a move that would alter the course of her daughter's life forever, she uprooted the entire family and moved them to Beverly Hills when Constance was just 16, all in the hopes of turning her into a star. In 1940, Constance got the break of a lifetime. Producer Arthur Hornblow Jr. was searching for a nightclub singer for his upcoming film I Wanted Wings, starring William Holden. The moment Hornblow watched Constance's screen test, he knew she was the one and hired her for the lead female role. But before she could step into the spotlight, Hornblow made one significant request: a new name. He suggested Veronica Lake, explaining that her eyes were calm and clear like a blue lake. Just like that, Constance Okelman became Veronica Lake, and a star was born. I Wanted Wings catapulted the 18-year-old Lake to stardom overnight. Despite her petite 4'11" frame, she commanded the screen with a presence that was impossible to ignore. She was once described in an interview as seductive, mischievous, with a delectable voice and mane. The hype was so intense that people were calling her the find of 1941 before the film even hit theaters. But behind the scenes, trouble was already brewing. Lake's behavior on set was far from professional. She frequently missed her call times, forcing director Mitchell Leeson to order her to stay on set all day just to ensure she'd be available when needed. This diva-like attitude was just the beginning of Lake's reputation for being difficult to work with. Ironically, the very thing that would cement Lake's iconic status happened by accident. During one scene in I Wanted Wings, Lake's hair kept falling into her eyes, creating a peekaboo effect. Although Lake thought she had ruined her chances, her producer Arthur Hornblow saw the star potential in this quirk and encouraged her to keep doing it. The look became an instant sensation, with women across America rushing to copy the style. At the height of her newfound fame, Lake made a decision that would have far-reaching consequences. In 1940, the teenage actress met and fell in love with art director John S. Detley. Despite their 14-year age gap, Lake jumped in with both feet, marrying him soon after meeting. This hasty decision would come back to haunt her in ways she couldn't have imagined. Following the success of I Wanted Wings, Lake was cast in Sullivan's Travels opposite Joel McCrea and under the direction of Preston Sturges. Everyone expected the film to be a huge hit, but Lake was hiding a secret that threatened to derail everything. She was 6 months pregnant with Detley's child when filming began, a fact she had kept from the entire production team. When Lake walked onto the set the first day, her director nearly had a meltdown. Sturges was so enraged that the crew had to physically restrain him from attacking the actress. Although they managed to cleverly hide Lake's condition with her body doubles and costuming, the damage to her reputation was done. Her co-star, Joel McCrea, vowed never to work with her again, saying, "Life's too short for 2 films with Veronica Lake." By this time, Lake had already started drinking heavily, partially to cope with the pressures of Hollywood, and partially because she loved the nightlife. She often showed up for early calls looking rough and thoroughly hungover. This behavior, coupled with her difficult attitude, began to turn cast and crew against her. Despite her marriage and impending motherhood, Lake took full advantage of her star status, carrying on a series of affairs with the likes of Howard Hughes, Aristotle Onassis, and Marlon Brando. Her reputation in Hollywood quickly soared, with co-star Eddie Bracking dubbing her the bitch and saying she deserved the title. Lake's tumultuous personal life took a heavy toll on her marriages and her relationship with her children. Her first affair with Howard Hughes began shortly after her marriage to Detley and set a pattern that would continue throughout her life. The liaison planted seeds of distrust in her marriage, and the birth of their daughter Elaine in 1941 did little to curb Lake's wandering eye or her growing alcohol dependency. As Lake's star continued to rise, so did the temptations around her. Her affair with Aristotle Onassis was particularly damaging to her marriage. Their relationship was an open secret in Hollywood, with the pair often seen together at exclusive parties and nightclubs. This public display of infidelity humiliated Detley and strained their already fragile marriage to the breaking point. The impact of Lake's affairs on her motherhood was equally devastating. Her frequent absences meant she was often an absent mother to her young daughter. Elaine was primarily raised by nannies and household staff, with Lake making only sporadic appearances in her life. This pattern of neglect would continue with her subsequent children. Just when it seemed things couldn't get worse for Lake, tragedy struck. In July 1943, while pregnant with her second child, Lake tripped over a wire on set and went into premature labor. She gave birth to a frail baby boy named Anthony, who only lived for about a week before passing away. The loss devastated both Lake and Detley, and their marriage couldn't survive the strain. They separated that same summer and finalized their divorce before the year was out. Reeling from her losses and with few healthy coping mechanisms, Lake made a series of bad decisions. Just months after losing her child and her marriage, she married again, this time to film director André de Toth. Although they would go on to have 2 children together, Lake's life was far from settling down into domestic bliss. Lake's scandals during her marriage to de Toth went beyond mere infidelity.
I used to think you were a man, Will. I don't care what you do to yourself or what you've done to me, I asked for it.
Her erratic behavior on film sets and public intoxication became frequent tabloid fodder. One particularly embarrassing incident occurred at a high-profile Hollywood party, where an inebriated Lake stripped down to her underwear and jumped into the host's swimming pool, shocking the industry elite in attendance. These public spectacles put immense pressure on de Toth, who found himself constantly doing damage control. He often had to negotiate with studio heads to keep Lake employed, promising to keep her behavior in check, a promise he struggled to fulfill. The strain began to show in his own work, with colleagues noting his increasing irritability and distraction on set. Lake's unpredictability extended to her home life as well. She would disappear for days at a time, leaving de Toth to care for their children alone. When she did return, it was often in the company of new, questionable acquaintances, some of whom were known to be involved in illicit activities. This not only put a strain on their marriage, but also jeopardized de Toth's own standing in the industry. The final straw came when Lake's reckless spending threatened to bankrupt the family. She had run up enormous debts with various creditors, including loan sharks with ties to organized crime. De Toth found himself in the unenviable position of having to choose between his wife and the safety of his children. Ultimately, he chose the latter, filing for divorce and seeking full custody of their children. The divorce proceedings were as messy as their marriage had been. Lake contested de Toth's custody claim, despite her prolonged absences from her children's lives. The court battle dragged on for months, with salacious details of their tumultuous relationship splashed across newspaper nationwide. In the end, de Toth was granted custody, with Lake's visitation rights severely restricted due to her ongoing substance abuse issues. This disheartened the star, worsening her drinking problem and further contributing to her downward spiral. This very public implosion of her second marriage effectively ended Lake's career in Hollywood. Studios, already wary of her difficult reputation, now saw her as box office poison. The scandals that had once fueled her notoriety now served only to make her unemployable in the industry that had once embraced her. Lake's children bore the brunt of her chaotic lifestyle. Michael and Diana, like their half-sister Elaine, were often left in the care of others while their mother pursued her career and her affairs. The lack of a stable home life and consistent parental presence had a profound impact on the children. They grew up in the shadow of their mother's fame and notoriety, often feeling neglected and overshadowed. As Lake's career continued to decline, her ability to care for her children diminished further. Her financial troubles, exasperated by her drinking and frivolous spending, meant that she struggled to provide for her family. The children often had to rely on the generosity of others, including their father and other family members, for basic necessities. The final blow to Lake's role as a mother came in 1952, when she abandoned her family and fled to New York. This act of desertion left her children feeling betrayed. While Lake would occasionally reach out to her children in later years, the damage to their relationship was beyond repair. For years, Lake fell into obscurity until a New York Post journalist tracked her down in 1962. What they found shocked the world. The once glamorous Veronica Lake was working as a cocktail waitress at the Martha Washington Hotel in Manhattan, living under the name Connie DeToth. The discovery sparked renewed interest in the long-lost star, with fans even sending her money. Her old flame Marlon Brando even had someone send her a check for $1,000, which Lake framed but never cashed. This rediscovery briefly reignited Lake's passion for the spotlight. She jumped back into entertainment, taking on television and film roles and publishing her autobiography. But years of alcohol abuse had taken their toll. Once praised for her beauty, Lake now looked haggard and much older than her mid-40s. Reporters had nothing but derogatory comments to make about her. Lake's return to the public eye revealed the deep scars left by her tumultuous life. In interviews, she spoke bitterly about her family, saying, "I am not going to hang on to my blood, nor am I going to allow them to hang on to me. I know what was done to me by my mother, and I'm not going to do that." The damage inflicted by years of Hollywood pressure, personal tragedy, and alcohol abuse was irreversible. In June 1973, while on tour promoting her autobiography, Lake began experiencing violent, debilitating stomach pains. A doctor in Vermont delivered the grim news. After years of heavy drinking, Lake had advanced cirrhosis of the liver. She was given only a few weeks to live. True to the doctor's prediction, Veronica Lake passed away in early July 1973 from acute hepatitis. The once shining star of Hollywood's golden age died virtually penniless at just 50 years old.